We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll open this up to the initial public comment. The initial public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. Anyone wishing to be heard or speak during the initial public comment, please come forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll go ahead and, please go ahead. And state your name for the record, please.
My name is Marian Vince, M-A-R-I-A-N-V-I-N-C-E. First of all, I apologize for my holiday attire. I just left a Christmas party to be here, so sorry. I am here representing the Blue Lake Homeowners Association. I'm the president of that organization, and I realize that we're not going to be able to speak while you're deliberating on the matter, but I just wanted to put it on record that our entire HOA, which consists of 20 homes, is against approval of this matter. We're more so, our disagreement is of the location of the facility, not necessarily the facility itself. So it's basically just on the other side of our wall.
And for the record, for clarification, we're talking for item number 3, St. Jude's Ranch for
Correct.
The children. Okay.
Correct. And like I said, all 20 homes are against approval of this. I'm just here to represent them and let that be known to them. I'm a longtime resident of Boulder City. I've been here for 40 years. My husband's family's been here since 1950. Grew up here. Kids grew up here. Have been involved in the city, just like you have been. Volunteers on commissions. I was Civil Service Commission for almost 20 years, chairman, but I've been a big part of this community, and St. Jude's has always been here. I know they've been here since '67, and I've done a lot of work with St. Jude's. So it's not like it's a big anything about the St. Jude's property. It's just the facility that they're proposing now and the location of that, which is just on the other side of, we call it our wall, but it's actually owned by them. So it's right on the other side of our wall. So we're the biggest area impacted by this. You got the Bella Vista group on the other side, but ours is that group there. So I guess I can't ask questions, or you can't ask me questions, but I just wanted to put that on record that our entire association is against this matter.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the initial public comment. For possible action, approval of the minutes of the November 20th, 2019 regular meeting.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. For possible action, AM 19344, resolution number 1184, Michael Ebby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is for a proposed text amendment to the city zoning ordinance, and that would be to allow iron fabrication businesses as a conditional use in the C2 general commercial zone and as a permitted use in the CM commercial manufacturing zone. The applicant owns an ornamental iron fabrication business in Henderson, which he would like to move to Boulder City, purchasing a property on Walnut Drive. Under the current ordinance, this type of use would only be allowed in our commercial manufacturing zone area, which, as commissioners will know, is generally the area on the north side of Boulder City Parkway, west of the truck route. After meeting with staff and discussing the alternatives, the applicant is requesting to amend the code so that this type of use would be allowed as a conditional use in the C2 zone, which is what the area on Walnut Drive is zoned. That's their specific proposal, staff added a related aspect to the request, and that would be to specifically list this use as a permitted use in the CM zone if this is also passed. If the applicant were simply planning on locating in the CM zone, we would not need to amend the code, as it would be a use similar to the other uses allowed in that zone. However, due to how ordinance language is constructed, once you add a specific type of use to one zone, that has implications, which in this case would mean that we would add the same language to the CM zone, but as a permitted use. And for the benefit of the audience who may not know, what a conditional use means is that those types of uses are not automatically allowed by right in that zone. They would only be allowed with a conditional use permit, which requires a public hearing before the Planning Commission, your deliberation about that proposal on a case-by-case basis, and property owners within 500 feet would be notified of that public hearing process. So if this is successful, this is actually a two-phase application by the applicant. The first would be to get the code amended to allow this particular use as a conditional use. That will then go to the City Council in January based on your recommendation. And then if that's successful, the applicant will be back before you in February with a proposed conditional use for the particular property that they're wanting on Walnut Drive. And at that point, you would deliberate the site-specific aspects of the request. This is just a general text amendment proposal related to allowing this use potentially within the C2 zone. In theory, even if the code were amended to allow this as a conditional use, there might never be such a use there. It just allows for the potential of it, because the Planning Commission would then still have to consider each request on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Koki, we'll start with you.
Susan, did I hear you correctly? Did you say you would like to make it a permitted use?
In the CM, commercial manufacturing zone.
Okay.
It's proposed as a conditional use in the C2 general commercial zone, which is most of the retail area in Boulder City is C2. The downtown area is C2. Buchanan frontage is C2. The south side of the highway west of Buchanan is C2. Our only CM area is, for the most part, north of the highway and west of US 93.
And that's where you'd like to see it as
That would be where it would be allowed as a permitted use, and this code.
and we wouldn't have to give for conditional again.
Not only because they want to locate in the C2 zone. They want to locate in our area zoned for general retail use.
Okay, so you're not asking us to, in a C2 zone, to make it permanent?
The request is to allow the use as a conditional use
Correct,
in the
I got
C2
that.
zone,
Okay.
meaning it allows for the potential of this use to be allowed in the C2 zone, but only if a conditional use permit is granted.
Okay. I thought I heard you say you wanted to do that. Okay, thank you.
Please, go ahead.
So Susan, just so I'm crystal clear, our business here tonight is simply to vote on the language changes to those titles to allow, as you point out, ornamental ironworks as a conditional use in a C2 and permitted but not to evaluate whether or not an ornamental ironworks in this location is appropriate.
That's correct. You're making a recommendation to council tonight regarding a code amendment.
And second question, have other city staff and most notably the fire department weighed in on this, or is this their time to weigh in yet?
It's not their time to weigh in. At this conditional use permit stage, if this code gets amended, then once you're dealing with a specific site, then yes, we will send the request around to other departments for their comment, because right now this is just a general text amendment. There's nothing for other departments to evaluate.
Very good, thank you.
I have a kind of a question for staff. Do we have any type of timetable on when we could get a land use table going?
A global land use table? I would you say within the next year, perhaps?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Maybe. It would just seem like it would be really helpful for the, and I know Boulder City is a small community, but as Susan was saying, how you make a change in one part of the code, it affects another part of the code. It'd be helpful for businesses coming into Boulder City to get a land use table and see what zone they need to be in for their business. Henderson does it, Vegas does it. I'm sure the county does it too. Anyway, and just as a point of clarification, this applicant or any applicant, for example, they could put their business on the north side of Boulder City Parkway, but they couldn't put it on the south side of Boulder City Parkway. It's the same exact street, just the way the zoning is.
That's correct.
So, thanks.
When I read the permitted uses under 1133, which covers C2 zone, and I believe that is what we're dealing with, correct? Why do we really consider this having to be added when all of the requirements under that zone allow for fabrication, mechanical, etc.? I don't understand it. And even item 11.2, as it was in there, says other uses similar to and consistent with the stated purpose of the zone. So I'm struggling with why we really are even looking at this.
May I ask, are you looking at page 21 of the packet?
I'm looking at your page 1 of 2 of page, yes, 21, excuse me.
Okay, page 21, you said 1133. I assume you mean at the bottom for chapter 13? That is the CM zone. And
It
that
says CM2 zone. In item 1 of it, it says CM2 zone.
Do you mean item D1, service establishments permitted in the C2 zone?
Right.
Right.
And it lists them all out, items including, how you want to say it, precision instrument shops, electrical welding shops, fabrication assembly, etc. I don't know how you could not consider an iron.
Right, it's just that part you're referencing is for the CM zone where we would allow this type of use because it is similar to the other ones. I'll mention just the only reason staff is proposing that part of the amendment is due to legal ordinance construct. The top half of that page for the C2, that's what the applicant wants. They want ornamental iron fabrication businesses to be allowed as a conditional use in the C2 zone. And then because the language below says that service establishments, for conditional uses in the CM zone, and I didn't give you this part, what it states is that all conditional uses in the C2 zone are also conditional uses in the CM zone unless specifically listed otherwise. So that's why if the code is amended to allow this use as a conditional use in the C2 zone, we have to specifically mention it as a permitted use in the CM zone. Because there'd be no point in making this a conditional use in the CM zone because it's too similar to all the permitted uses in the CM zone.
I'm still confused, and I guess the problem, and I apologize, I mean, maybe I really don't understand it, but if the CM zone allows for that kind of stuff, and we're saying that anything within the C2 zone can fit within the CM category, and it even states that as far as uses, why are we dealing with it?
What you're doing is you're doing it in reverse. So what the code says is permitted uses in the C2 zone are allowed in the CM zone. Right now, this use is not permitted either as a permitted or conditional use in the C2 zone. What Susan is saying is that if the city is going to consider this text amendment, we also have to look at the implications of it on the CM zone. Because as you pointed out, in the CM zone, there are other similar uses, and without the addition of this specific use to the CM zone, it will cause problems with how the code is set up.
Okay,
and
so
it's a clarification point as well.
well, if we're going to clarify the point, then why wouldn't we make it a little more general like it's written in the CM zone? Why change the CM zone to add a permitted use as specific as an iron business, and why not just put it in as a fabrication and metalworks business?
And there's an answer for that. The way ordinance language, the construct, it has to do with basically statutory and contract law. If you specifically list a use such as ornamental iron fabrication businesses only in the C2 zone as a conditional use, legally that would mean if you did not specify it in the CM zone, it would be a conditional use in the CM zone, because the chapter says every conditional use in the C2 zone is also a conditional use in the CM zone unless specifically listed as a permitted use.
But we're dealing with the text amendment, not to the code, not to the conditional use of it, aspect of it.
Yes, it's the code has permitted and conditional uses.
So maybe just to be specific, and because we don't have the text amendment actually for the CM zone, does it also have the clause in there? It says other uses similar to and consistent with the stated purpose of the other items. Is that clause in there? Because I didn't see that, and I apologize for not looking ahead on that.
Yes, that language is in there. It's just reordered.
So if that language is in there, why wouldn't it still apply?
Because of the way, because as I mentioned, if you've got a specific use listed in one zone and it's not listed in the other zone, then the legal interpretation is that, well, ornamental iron fabrication businesses were only listed as a conditional use in the C2 zone and nowhere else. And then in the CM chapter, under conditional uses, it specifically states all conditional uses in the C2 zone are also conditional uses in the CM zone unless listed as a permitted use in this zone. So that's the corollary part of this amendment, is to allow this as specifically allow it as a permitted use in the CM zone, because otherwise it would legally be interpreted to be a conditional use in the CM zone, and there's no reason that it would be a conditional use.
I'm sorry, what chapter are you reading me from that's not in our text here?
Your text at the bottom is chapter 13 for permitted uses, and I did not include the conditional use language excerpt because that isn't being changed.
I was going to say, it doesn't say anything to that effect, so that's why I'm kind of operating at a disadvantage here.
Well, it was mentioned in the staff report for the reason for that.
Okay. Well, I'll go back to my main point. We're asking for text to language change, which says add ornamental iron fabrication business. Why do we have to state ornamental iron? Why can't it just be metal fabrication and cover it?
Well, because for one thing, that would be broader than what the applicant is asking for, and it may not be something in general that the Planning Commission or City Council may not want to allow that broad of a manufacturing use as a conditional use in the C2 zone. And if you'll let me mention, the applicant's agent is here, and I believe she's going to have information to show why this type of iron fabrication business is less intense than other types of fabrication businesses.
I have no issue with the way the application is laid out and the facts that are there, because to me it sounds like we're still dealing with something that I believe is covered, because even when you read the paragraphs, as I started with, the basic statement says other uses similar, consistent to the stated purpose of the zone. And so if that statement is in there, why do you need the specifics called out? You should have some, that paragraph to me tells me you have a little broader interpretation, which in some cases I think we would want. Okay? That's all. Beyond that, if that's my point.
Any other questions for staff before we invite the applicant up? Nope, at this time, we'll go ahead and invite the applicant up if we've got a presentation or anything. Please state your name for the record.
Connie Harris. I'm Connie. If I could just take a second before I get to I think I have some key pieces that might help address some of what you were just saying too. But just to tell you just briefly who we are. I am the office administrator for EB Iron Designs and also Mike EB's mom. He graduated from Boulder City out here. Went to the welding, did the welding program and has been welding ever since. He quickly became a project manager and ultimately opened his own business about 10 years ago. And many of the core of our 14 employees are guys who've been with him all of that time. We are right now in Henderson on Eastgate. We're leasing it, and what brings me here now is a few months ago, he started looking for property. Largely because we need a yard, but also because he wants to own something rather than lease it. We made an offer and it was accepted, and we were headed down the road to purchasing 909 Walnut when we realized it wasn't zoned correctly. So we stopped the deal. Mr. Mays, through our realtors and a couple other Boulder City folks, reached out to us and said, maybe there's another way. So we took a look at it and thought, well, maybe they're right. So with that said, if I could just share a few things with you that might help you to consider this. We are an ornamental iron fabricator, which is a unique kind of manufacturing. We don't make things, we do three things. We cut, we bend, and we weld steel. That's it. The steel is completely recyclable afterward. There's no waste, there's no odor. We're not a retail operation, so there's no traffic coming and going. And because all of the fabrication takes place inside of the shop, there's no noise. So we are different considerably from, I think, what is meant for the manufacturing, the CM zone that you were speaking of. You have things here in Boulder City out there like Ameritire and what is the name of the other one out there? The cement, Armor Rock, things like that clearly belong in a manufacturing zone. We are quite different. I've had people ask me if we pour iron in molds, for example. We do nothing like that. Again, we just weld and bend and cut steel. Like you, I was looking at other C2 permitted uses. And the one that really stuck out to me was the automobile repair that's allowed within that zone. We're obviously not like an automobile repair shop, but we actually leave less of a footprint in the environment than they would with the oil or chemicals that they would have to clean up. We have none of that. And then there is further a conditional use already in the C2 zone, which just so happens would be our neighbors immediately to the north, Urban Jungle, and then next to them, FBN Construction, who received back in, I think, 2002, a conditional use permit for a construction storage yard. They do work there also. And then the property itself has been, as I mentioned in that packet you have, has been a boat repair shop forever. At some point, Boulder City decided that, I'm not even really clear, but it wasn't okay, and yet they allowed it. They gave him a memorandum, and it's in your deal, saying that that property could forever be a boat machine repair shop, and even if he were to sell it to somebody else. And again, I think we're less intrusive even than that. It's those things that caused us to feel like, well, maybe this would be okay. I've been around to talk. I was told that tonight was not the night to bring letters, but I have been around and talked to some of the folks who own businesses in the C2 zones in other areas other than our street, or in addition to those on our street, who are all in favor of this type of thing. Where we're at right now in Eastgate, I don't know if you were familiar with the Craft House Brewery or the Las Vegas Distillery. Those are our neighbors. So hopefully that tells you something. I mean, we operate all inside. We're right next to a key business and another office. We're not the kind of manufacturing place that distracts or deters from those type of businesses. The other thing that stood out to me, I guess, when I was looking, because part of this process is being able to show how we conform with the master plan out here. And as I read this is wordage from the master plan: a strong, diversified economic base. The city should encourage the maintenance of existing jobs and the creation of new employment opportunities in the city to strengthen the economic base of the community and to reduce regional commuting patterns of its residents. Efforts should be focused on maintaining the existing base of business, on attracting new businesses to serve both local residents and tourists. So to me, it feels like we're perfect for that. Michael has a very successful business. We have about 50% of our work is for home builders and the other 50% for residential people. He's in excess of $2 million this year. And as I said, has employees that have been with him forever. They're all the kind of people that you want working in your community and or living here. And we would bring business out here. We have company trucks that come and go, throughout the day. We have to get gas, we have to eat, we have to do all those things. And he's a hometown kid. He loves Boulder City, and I know this has nothing specifically to do with the text amendment, but I do think that we are a good fit. And I think it feels to me like if our type of manufacturing is just understood, then it's maybe not that much of a reach.
Thank you very much. And we're going to have some questions for you, I'm sure, here. I'd like to remind the commission, though, that we're not talking specifically about their specific business, this exact location that we're talking about, the text amendment as well. So we do have someone who's an expert as far as the ornamental iron side. Thank you for the differentiation in what the different iron work is there. But just to remind the commission, it's just about the text amendment and not their specific. And that's why we didn't have you bring letters and things, because we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So any questions of the applicant? Okay, I've got one here for you, and this is the only one that I've got, and it's going to go along with staff as well. I don't know if they let you know. They described briefly the process that here we're talking about the text amendment, and if we approve the text amendment, it goes to the city council. We're waiting on their approval, and then you're going to actually have to come back before this body and request that conditional use that the text is based on. I reiterate that process because here tonight, 2 of our commissioners are done, and we're going to have replacements. And we've got one on an extended leave of absence. So although you may garner or lose support tonight, the landscape can look very different in 30 days. So whether there's support here this evening, that does not guarantee you support in 60 days when you come back before this body, because the look and feel might be different. Just want to make sure that you're understanding of that, so you don't feel like you've been caught off guard later on.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead and start some deliberation.
I would just like to say, I think it fits well in over there on that street with all the...
Public hearing after this.
Oh.
I'm going to steal it back.
I'm stopping. Okay.
Thank you very much for reminding me. This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to be heard on this matter, anyone wishing to speak? Yes, please come forward.
Michael Ulepik, and I'm the manager of the building at the corner of 1007 Elm and Walnut. And I'm all for this. I can't see why things change, and if they've changed, why haven't we been notified of the change? I've been there for over 20 years, and I never received a notice. With this process, why we have to get the special permits, if we get someone in there. But besides that, I support this, and I think she's will be a great tenant. and I'm all for it, just to let you know.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing on that and bring it back around to Koki, please.
I think, for me, it makes sense over there, and there's a lot of other businesses doing a lot of the same thing, and I think that they would be a great asset to Boulder City, and I think we should make the recommendation to put this on the list or give them, or to add it so that we can bring them back for conditional use. That's what I thought.
Was that an official motion? Was there any other?
I would like to make that motion if that's okay.
I speak.
Absolutely. We do have a motion, though. Is there a second? And then we've got deliberation.
I would second the motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Before I call for the vote, let's call for some more deliberation. Ernie.
Yeah. The only question I kind of have is actually to your point. Is there any reason why we're not looking at both things right now? If we're going to do a text amendment, why isn't the conditional use?
Because this is just a recommendation. The city council has to make the final approval. So there is that step of city council.
Could we include that
Conditional use?
In other words, could we address, no, we can address the fact of the text change as perhaps it's proposed, and then could we not say that the conditional use would also be recommended that it be consistent with and also approvable?
There's going to be a lot of logistics behind that, Susan.
The simple answer is that a conditional use permit requires notification of property owners within 500 feet. And therefore, that was not done because we couldn't advertise a conditional use permit for something that the code doesn't allow.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. The area down there already has the look and feel that a business of this type, maybe not this one in particular to stay neutral, but a business of this type would fit in perfectly down there. You're going to have the expansion of the fire department across the street. So it really doesn't look conducive to many other types of retail shops or anything else that you would find in there. So that's my 2 cents. Absolutely.
I just want to make a comment about, I'm just going to echo sentiments of a couple of people on this commission, and that is I could see this being a conditional use in the C2 zone on Walnut, but approving a conditional use for this type of use in, say, the motel district, for example, it probably wouldn't be in favor of. So I do think this being a conditional use item in the C2 district is appropriate. Almost everything going down Walnut is industrial in nature. You go up and down Walnut, and most of those buildings, if not all of them, they've got roll-up garage doors similar to warehouse space. Even back of Fox's has a roll-up door. So it's just, I think it's appropriate in this area. And I know we're not talking specifically to this one, but I can see how this would fit.
Absolutely. Any comments? Otherwise, we've got a motion and a second.
You know me. I just want to...
Could you repeat what the motion is, just so I know?
Mm-hmm. We've got a couple more comments.
if I could, I'll just finish my comment real quick. I too agree that in this particular location, or maybe I'm just going to take a step back from what Nate said. I agree that this seems that in this location, this seems appropriate. I did have to really think about this a little bit, because what we're doing here, in essence, is saying that we're going to have to trust a future planning commission that they'll do the right thing and not, in fact, conditionally approve an ornamental iron shop between two motels, let's say. I mean, I think many of us here would agree that that's probably not the way we would envision or want to see this moved in the future. So as we cast our votes, just remember there's opportunity for wrongdoing, like anything. But anyway, I seconded the motion. I'm certainly in favor of it.
I just want to say what Nate said. I think it's good to have a conditional use in this particular C2 area, because then that way other planning commissioners can go and do the same thing. They can say, yes, this project fits well in this area, but not this area. So they would have the opportunity to be able to deny a conditional use. So I agree. I think you should have the conditional use in the C2 for that reason. So I thought that was a very good point. And I vote aye.
And just to reiterate again, I already said this once, but I think it's kind of crazy that a business similar to Ms. Harris could be on the north side of Boulder City Parkway, but can't be on the south side of Boulder City Parkway with our current code the way it is. And it's the same exact street. C2 is on the south end. It's on Walnut, but if she was next to B&J Auto Body, for example, she'd be just fine.
But can I say something just to read it? On the other side of the street, you do have a lot of single families, mobile home parks, townhomes. So on that side of the street, I think you have to be more cognizant of what that commercial project is going there. So I can see it on that street now. I was same with you in the beginning, but I really, after thinking about it, that you don't want to put a paint shop right next to a housing tract.
You need a buffer zone.
Yeah. So that's my thought. Okay. Way off topic here.
I've got a motion and a second on the floor, and just to reiterate, this is a adoption of Resolution 1184, which is simply a recommendation on a zoning ordinance text amendment sent to the City Council. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Good luck.
For possible action, resolution number 1185, St. Jude's Ranch for the Children, 100th Street, Jude's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. St. Jude's plans to develop the remaining approximate 10 acres of its nearly 39-acre campus. The 10-acre portion to be developed is at the northeast end of their property. Where's the down? Is it right? What's on the screen right now is St. Jude's master plan from 1997. As the staff report notes that per provisions of the original 1967 land sales agreement, the Planning Commission and City Council are to review plans for the undeveloped portions of the St. Jude's property. The reviews back in the 60s originally anticipated reviews every 5 years for undeveloped land, but by 1981 they had basically created their first master plan. And since then, it's only when the master plan is proposed to be changed that then it comes forward to the Planning Commission and City Council. So any new buildings that are proposed that are consistent with whatever their current master plan is don't have to come to the Planning Commission or City Council. That's the point of this, what we call a master site plan or a master development plan. For this, and as you can see, the area that we're talking about is on the right side of that map. It was approved with the 1997 plan, anticipated for outdoor recreational fields for the most part in that area. The current proposal, which the concept plans are from their 2018 drafts, and it's still conceptual at this phase. So this is not necessarily a final permanent layout for anything but representative of what they have in mind for the property at this time. So instead of the recreational facilities on that northeast 10 acres, now they're proposing what they're calling their Healing Center campus, and this would have 60 new residents there. They're currently licensed for 60 youth and children on the remaining part of the campus. As their information notes, there will be staff on duty within each of the 6 homes 24 hours a day. St. Jude's also did prior outreach to the area regarding this proposal in the fall of 2018, inviting the closest 1,000 households to their information sessions. Because this procedure is relative to the land sales agreement, there's not really provision in that process for public notification, but with the 1997 plan, since that was a major change, property owners within 300 feet were notified then, so that's the policy that we followed for this proposal as well. For this current update, in addition to the new facilities proposed for the remaining 10 acres, St. Jude's basically has also provided you an update of all the other changes that basically, have happened or didn't happen since the 1997 plan. So one of the aspects of the attached resolution is that if this is approved by City Council, that they'll have to give us an updated site plan for the whole 39-acre parcel, because obviously some buildings aren't currently used for what they were anticipated to be used back in 1997. And basically providing that updated plan will just be a cleanup so that the city is fully aware of all the activities on site, and so that police and emergency services can get to the right buildings and know what they're called, et cetera. Relative to that, there will be detailed analyses of the development impacts of this at a later stage if this master plan is approved, because allotments would be required for those new group homes. The intent of the growth control ordinance is to evaluate the type of growth that would have an impact on utilities and infrastructure in the school system. So even though this type of group home doesn't neatly fit the language currently used in the growth control ordinance, it's logical that it would apply to it for that purpose. However, we did ask staff to review this master plan concept, since it is different from the one 22 years ago. At this point, you've got the police department's response, the police chief's response in the packet. He sees no issues with regard to that, this new part of the proposal. The fire chief didn't get me a written response at this time, but his comments were just the standard ones he would have for any type of new development. Since this part of the campus is proposed to be fenced and gated off from the rest of it, he's going to need to have his the type of access that will allow him to get through that gate 24/7, and also at a later stage when if this becomes reality, then ensuring that the road widths and circulation pattern can handle the emergency vehicles, and that sprinklering would be required for the buildings as required by the fire code. But again, all of that analysis would come at a later stage. This is essentially the master concept plan for this 10 acres. And as per the land sales program established back in '67, it's coming to the Planning Commission for your recommendation to the City Council on this master plan change from the 1997 version.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions and we'll swing it around. We just talked about the different department heads. Any utility easements, any major issues, concerns with any of the other departments? We talked fire and police, concerns with just the conceptualization.
I haven't had the formal response back from Public Works, but I know they're aware of it, and I was about to say, I'm not sure if there are easement issues. I'm sorry, I was reviewing other plans today where there were easement issues, so I don't want to get those confused. But certainly that would be addressed at a later point. I mean, so yes, in theory, as I said, since this is a concept plan, it's not as if St. Jude's wants to guarantee that these buildings will be exactly what is proposed in terms of either architectural or formal, building footprints, et cetera, but the general concept. And the general concept shows the buildings, roughly 100 to 150 feet inside the property lines that abut the two abutting neighborhoods. And the staff report also notes that it's not as if those homes are right against the St. Jude's property line. In each case, there are either utility easements or roads that separate the St. Jude's boundary from where the homes begin. So this concept does, basically allows for 200 to 300 feet between the new St. Jude's buildings and the neighboring buildings, certainly as part of the Planning Commission's recommendation. I mean, if you feel more comfortable specifying that, while you know the exact building layout may change at a later point, if you would like your recommendation to include a minimum distance from the north and east property lines, you can make that as part of your recommendation. We can amend the resolution
And to
as
run that
needed.
down, following question, current zoning right now, what is it currently zoned as?
It's currently zoned R1-8, which is single-family residential. It's the same zoning as everything around it. And St. Jude's received a conditional use permit back in 1967. And basically within the single-family residential zones, there are, like most other zones, various conditional uses allowed. Those uses which do require a review on a case-by-case basis.
And I hate to cut you off because I'm headed one way, you're headed another.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we're a residential R18. So if St. Jude's Ranch wasn't the owner of that, and let's say there was another community there, we could in theory have a couple hundred single and two-story residential in that area. In theory.
In theory, yes.
That's what would be authorized
Right.
there. And they wouldn't need to come and get any conditional use to build a community out there like Del Prado. They wouldn't need anything other than variances like carports. So it's already zoned for that, and we could have a higher density single-family home. That's what it's there by right now.
That's correct.
Okay, beautiful. Any other questions? I've got my couple answered. Nate, I think you were.
Actually, to pick up on your point, would the, based on what the chairman was saying, would it have been more appropriate for that actually originally be zoned R3, or let's say in terms of the current zoning?
Not necessarily, even though, as I mentioned in the staff report, there was an initial conditional use permit. And if the city hadn't sold the land and structured that land sales agreement the way they did, normally these types of changes would be amendments to the conditional use permit. But conditional uses allowed in the single-family zone include public and quasi-public buildings and uses, private schools, uses of an educational, religious, cultural, or public service type. So all of those, basically, especially if St. Jude's were coming into this property today, we would say it could be allowed as a conditional use under the category of an educational or religious or public service type facility.
And you would say yes?
That would be up to the Planning Commission, but it would be interpreted as an allowed conditional use. It would not require a multifamily zoning.
It seems it's stretching the issue as to condition of even an educational facility in the sense it has living quarters. That would be the question I guess I would have, which is why I'm wondering why it wouldn't be something more appropriate for an R2, R3 zone, that's all. And I guess the only reason I'm asking that is it just seemed to me that part of what maybe we should be dealing with is also an update to the zone there so that it does cover us going into the future.
Well, for one thing, R2 or R3 would allow much higher density.
But correct. However, it would at least address better what we have. That's all.
Basically, the conditional uses in R2 and R3 are the exact same as they are in R1. In fact, it repeats those over.
But they do allow for multiple family.
That's correct, but this is...
So that is different.
That's one way to look at it. Another way is that multifamily traditionally means that those multiple family units are available to any buyer or any tenant to use. St. Jude's is not that type of multifamily resident. These may be group homes, but it's not as if any member of the public can apply to live in them, nor can any member of the public choose to buy a unit. St. Jude's indicates itself as a religious facility, that provides this unique childcare setup. So, it's not a multifamily use in that regard.
Koki, you had some questions.
Susan, I like the idea of the minimum distance because that's the same thing that I heard tonight from someone is how close the homes would be. But if we put a condition in there of 100 feet or 200 feet, how will we know that that won't do harm to what we're doing here? I mean, how many feet could we really say without causing harm to the project?
Mr. Chairman, we do have the applicant here, and so certainly that's a dialogue.
Okay, I'll ask the question of applicant.
I have another question. You mentioned the issue of we have the surrounding wall, and I believe you said gated. That came out in the review you had with fire department. This gated is this a gated front entrance, meaning it is controlled? Do you happen to know that, or I can ask the applicant if you don't?
No, the information is in the packet. They specify that it will be gated and walled off from the rest of the community with a secure gate.
Okay, I didn't see the gated. Apologize. Thanks.
All right. So, Susan, you said that this would allow, the new healing center will allow up to 60 residents maximum, and the existing campus is licensed for 60 units.
60 children, apparently.
For 60 children/youth. So, how many people are living in, maybe this is a question for St. Jude's, but how many people are living there now, and how much is this going to increase the head count total?
They indicated that their current staffing level is 62 full-time equivalent positions. And she says right now, and she says it varies over the year and between years in terms of whether or not they are at full capacity for children or not, so therefore staffing will vary. But her answer was that on average about 23 staff currently reside on site.
And no children/youth?
Oh, no,
We're at zero?
they're licensed for up to 60 residents, and Christina can answer how many they currently have.
Let's table some of those applicant
Sure.
questions. Anything else for staff?
If this were to go forward, do we have assurances that any utility infrastructure cost is not going to be incurred by the city? Is this going to be all, we're going to treat them, St. Jude's, like a developer, and they're going to have to pay for whatever infrastructure needs that they have? Because I'm sure they don't have sewer lines running up in that area.
We would treat this like every other development, and the developer would be required to connect to existing utilities.
So no additional cost to the city for this?
Correct.
Got it.
Thank you for patiently waiting. Please state your name and then get any presentation, and then we'll bring it around for questions.
Thank you so much for having me this evening. My name is Christina Vella, and I am the CEO of St. Jude's Ranch for Children. Also with me is Lance Kirk, who is a representative from LGA, who is our architect working on this project with us. So I'll highlight just a few things. As mentioned in the report, we are looking to expand our existing services by developing that 10 acres with 6 homes. 3 homes will be 4-bedroom homes, and 3 homes will be for 6 bedrooms. We are also anticipating having an on-site school for the residents of that part of the campus. A multi-purpose building that has an on-site school, some tutor labs, computer lab, yoga room, and a physical fitness room. And then our main building, which will be the administration building, will be a place that is accessible to visitors. So individuals will be able to pull onto the part of the campus, park in the visitor parking area, and enter into the main administrative building where there will be conference rooms and offices. In order to access the remainder part of the campus, it will be a gated part of the campus so that only approved individuals can can actually drive onto the campus. Some of the questions that I heard from you all. What is our current capacity at the existing part of the campus? So as mentioned, we are licensed by Clark County Department of Family Services and Clark County Juvenile Services, as well as Washoe County Social Service and the State of Nevada Division of Child and Family Services. Being licensed for those 60 children, we on average have anywhere from 40 to 50 children. We have 10 existing homes on our campus. What we're looking to develop on the furthest 10 acres of the campus are those additional 6 homes, the school and the multi-purpose building and the administration building. We have copies of which I believe all of the members of the commission received of the conceptual plan. And to this point, we are recognizing that each of the homes to the closest to vicinity or neighboring neighborhoods would be at least 150 feet from our property line inwards. So that in general is the project. Are there other questions that I can be of assistance?
Yeah, I've got a couple, unless you've got someone follow up for there. So you've got an average 40 to 50 youth that are in there at any given time, but you're permitted up to 60.
Yes.
Are you at then physical capacity? Is that what's driving this expansion? Are you going to be able to expand your services to other types of youth? If we're not already utilizing our current licenses, what's sparking this growth?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. Again, Christina Vela, CEO of St. Jude's Ranch. We are interested in expanding to provide specialty services in those homes that would look a bit different than our existing homes. It will still be a therapeutic residential foster care model, but what we recognize is for the victims that we're aiming to serve in this population, we want to utilize a bit of a specialized model. We utilized evidence-based models as well as trauma-informed care. And although we do that on our existing part of the campus, we are looking to specialize primarily for females, for children that are child victims of sex trafficking. Although we do currently serve child victims of trafficking on our campus, we do believe that specializing, building out some additional homes for that specialty program will be of incredible added value to children that are in need in Southern Nevada.
Do they have those same type of programs and resources elsewhere that specialize so specifically in those types of victims and youth? Are we aware there are other programs and resources around Southern Nevada?
Currently, there are no other specialized programs. What we recognize in conversations with our community leaders is that currently a lot of girls remain unnecessarily in the juvenile detention facility, and the judge and all of the family service providers would like to put these children in a home environment. And at times, we recognize that we need enhanced victim services. And really our response and our desire to build this project is out of response of an ongoing community need. And although we, of course, are in Boulder City, we recognize that child sex trafficking is a growing area of concern across our entire state. And so really this is just in partnership with, as I mentioned, our community leaders asking us if we at St. Jude's Ranch for Children can be part of the solution to care for this population.
Thank you. Nate, you had some questions.
I really appreciate what you guys are doing over there. My wife is a social worker, so I get stories from her, and so what you're doing for the community is amazing.
Thank you.
Are you going to be reusing the existing homes in any way? Because it sounds, maybe my interpretation is wrong. But it sounds like you're going to be shifting head count from your existing homes into the new healing center that could potentially be going in. What is your plan for those?
Yeah, for clarification, we will keep our existing 10 homes in operation and providing that home for up to those 60 children on our current campus. We don't anticipate shifting kids from one side of the campus to another. What this will offer is additional beds and resources that Southern Nevada is in need of. Our goal is that if we envision girls coming into the Healing Center, staying in this specialized program for 6 months to a year, and if they're not able to transition back safely into the community, maybe their family is part of the trafficking situation, or the parents are not able to, are choosing to not keep their child safe. We could anticipate seeing the children step from the Healing Center onto the existing St. Jude's, one of those other 10 homes. Our commitment is to provide hope and healing for children, and they can stay with us up until their 18th birthday. And so we might see some transition between the two programs, but we are looking to add additional beds, not shift up to 60 we currently have into the Healing Center. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
It does. Thanks.
Thank you.
Making sure that.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming here, and I would echo Nate's comments once again. You guys are doing a really nice job. You'd mentioned it's going to have an on-site school. Will the children in this facility be attending the public school?
Okay, so the children that will be living at the Healing Center will specifically go to school in the Healing Center on that property. We believe that for a period of time, as we are reprogramming maybe the young people's experiences, or helping them through their traumatic, helping them heal from the trauma that they've experienced, that having an on-site school will be most beneficial for them. So the Healing Center children will go to school on the campus. The children that we have currently on our campus will continue to attend Boulder City Elementary and Middle School, as they always have for all 53 years. At some point, we envision that if a young person is at the Healing Center, has made substantial progress, has accomplished a lot of their clinical goals, and is ready to transition to a different program, then at that point they could transition to one of our other homes and then be integrated into the school system. But what we recognize about child victims of trafficking is oftentimes they have not been in school for some time. They're very credit deficient. They're used to not being up at 8 o'clock in the morning and going to school. And so, as to not cause disruption in any of our public schools, we believe it's really important to help these young people readjust, get reacclimated to educational goals, do all of the assessments that they need, and then help at some point, once they've successfully completed that program, transition either to our other programs or back into the Las Vegas Valley, maybe with a family or an adoptive family, or whomever is able to provide that care for that young person.
Second question, the package, and I think you've indicated as well that this facility will have its own fence and be gated, basically be fenced and gated from the rest of the existing facility. Is that for the protection of these children, or what? Helps understand.
Yeah, we would like to just separate out the campus so that the current part of our campus is much more of an open campus, and the children ride the school bus, and members of the community are welcome onto the campus. For the Healing Center, we just believe that it's really important in helping these young people overcome from the negative effects of abuse and the trauma that they've experienced, to have a bit more of a controlled environment. And so although community members will be able to come and visit at the Healing Center, it will be a bit more under controlled visit, as opposed to currently the way our campus gates open at 7 o'clock in the morning on our existing campus and close at 5 p.m. so that individuals from the community can come in and visit. Of course, they can frequent the chapel or our thrift store, things like that. Yeah, does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably along the same line, I have a few questions. Let me start with, it is a gated. Is that just, how is access through the gate granted? Is that through only specialized key coded access that's given out once you get into the administration building, or how does that work?
Well, we're still working with security experts as we're further developing the project, but we anticipate that, yes, there will be currently, like our existing campus, where there's a keypad at the entrance of the gate, so when it's closed at night, or staff are coming onto campus, that they would have a specialized code, or we're looking at using like key passes, the electronic cards that would allow access.
Are you looking at that to only be at night and open during the day?
No. For the healing center, it would be 24 hours a day.
Okay.
It would be
24/7.
behind, yes,
Okay.
24/7.
So is your intent to have it manned, perhaps, or is that kind of thing, or just through the administration, the building there?
At this point, we are considering, with the security experts that we've talked to, is, of course, as we currently have on our campus, we utilize cameras and ongoing recording of people coming and going. We recognize that for staff, if they have a key card, they would be able to have access to the campus. If they're a visitor, they would be escorted through the campus with an employee. There will be enough parking in our estimation upon entering the main part of the campus, and so whether we open up the gate to allow for somebody to drive on the campus will be certainly based on staff.
But it sounds like it's controlled.
Yes.
Does the administration building also lock down then after a certain time, probably?
Yes.
So you really are locking it down fully, I would say, except for people that have already access.
Yes, we will be using technology for our security needs. We definitely are not looking to create anything that feels institutional. This is simply a way to ensure everyone's safety, and certainly maintaining the campus under surveillance and supervision as we currently do all of the rest of our campus.
Yeah, there's inter and intra.
Yes.
The other question I sort of had is the homes are supposed to be staffed. And just for clarity, are they security people? Are they professional people? How are they staffed?
Yeah, we hire high quality staff. Our existing training program and hiring requirements is that it be individuals that have experience working with child victims of abuse and neglect. We anticipate it being at a minimum exactly what we have, but at a maximum we certainly will have much more specialized training for the individuals that will be living in the houses and operating that. Again, we utilize evidence-based models. We utilize a model that's approved by Duke University, and we have a certification for that model called Together Facing the Challenge. And we will also be using trauma-informed care modalities. And so all of our staff are really caregivers and are highly qualified and or trained to serve that specialized population.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. The minimum distance is 150 feet, you say right now. This might be for the architect. Is it possible to give them 200 feet on the two sides where the neighborhoods are without causing a problem?
Good evening, Lance Kirk with LGA Architecture. It is possible, but it does limit the site, right? If you look at the site plan that was up earlier and it's in your packet there, you can see how they're all kind of towards the middle of the campus, and that was done intentional to really keep the edges and open and keep the homes furthest away as they can. So the tighter that gets, the more difficult the roads will be, the planning for the site, the space allowed for the homes, and to make them feel like a traditional house so they can feel comfortable and warm there. So it would be difficult to do, but it's not impossible.
Okay, but you do guarantee 150 feet right now?
Correct, yeah, absolutely. That is on the drawing now, and that was always intended to be that distance from the original design.
So if we said you must maintain that, that wouldn't be an issue for you?
Correct.
And the fencing that's around the property, is this a block wall? Are you putting new chain link fencing up? What is your intention on that?
Well, it's the existing wall. More than likely will be improved. I don't believe it'll be chain link, but it will be improved to help any concerns the neighbors might have and the aesthetics of the campus and the new campus.
So it'll be basically a block wall like you have up now. Across the backside, I don't know if that's a block wall or not. Is that a block wall?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is, yes. It's all block walled. And we would, to Lance's point, make any improvements that are needed to that block wall.
Okay. And so there'll be like at least a 6-foot block wall that you could have, and then,
Yes, I believe it is currently a 6-foot wall, but we will continue to evaluate. It's a really interesting piece of land. It is built a bit on a ridge, and we are looking to utilize that ridge to the benefit of the campus, of it being really even much lower, at a lower elevation than our existing campus. So we're not interested in building up that space or anything to that. As a matter of fact, it will really add to the healing and therapeutic nature of that campus and to that residential feel. So
thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.
Got a follow-up question. Michael, you might have the answer for this. The original purchase agreement and the layout of pretty much we've just got to come back and look at this master plan. But the agreement, in essence, said that as long as it still kind of generally conforms and there's nothing major, that's what the agreement lays out for, and they can expand if they kept it the exact same architecture and that type of stuff, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Before we bring it around the dais here, I've got a few things I'd like to... Ooh, this is not listed for a public comment.
It's not a public hearing per the land sales agreement, but you are certainly welcome to open up any agenda item to public comment.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to make my few points here. Number one, we just heard, we can find ourselves legally in some issues because there's already a purchase agreement. There's already the conditional uses approved. Everything's in good order. And what they're laying out on the master plan is not extremely deviating from their existence of the buildings there. So we always want to keep Boulder City out of civil litigation if we can. Number two, heard some concerns about the possibility of the type of victims that might be there and the crime that might come of it and all of that stuff. So although it's a part of our packet, I do want to make sure that the good of the public gets to hear from our own police chief, Timothy Shea, and says, St. Jude's has a very slight impact on our operations. This program expansion will increase the residential numbers of those who have been victimized and exploited and need safety, security, and a structure to break those chains of exploitation. A majority of these young victims will probably be young females who traditionally are more likely to be a victim of, rather than the perpetrator of, serious criminal activity. Given the St. Jude screening criteria, coupled with well-demonstrated policies and procedures with a track record of excellence by staff, I do not see the proposed expansion causing a noticeable or concerning potential for an increase in law enforcement-related services. Point number three, some folks have voiced concerns of the look of the area, and as we reiterated this evening, it's zoned right now for residential, so we could have 350 two-story buildings. Looks like there's going to be some great greenery in there and only a couple of buildings themselves. By right in that residential zoning area, I think they've got to be 15 feet off the wall. So saying they're going to be 150 to 200 feet off a wall, and that they've agreed to keep everything at single story. Sounds pretty neighborly to me. And number 4, a major resource. We identified this evening that there's no other resource for these victims in Southern Nevada. I think this is a unique opportunity for Boulder City to be a good neighbor to the rest of Southern Nevada, and in fact up even into Northern Nevada. It's something that's needed, and I think we should be very proud as Boulder City and wear this with a badge of honor. So those are my comments. I'll open it up to the rest. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I will go ahead and make the motion to approve Resolution 1185 with staff's findings.
And the recommendations? Or the conditions?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
I've got a motion and a second. Any
Can I
other
add a
conversation?
friendly amendment to that? I'd like to put in there that we keep it, that it does go into this, that it's at they keep 150 feet away from the residential properties.
I'm agreeable to that.
May I offer a dissenting voice? I think 150 feet, again, I don't know whether, so right now the way it's proposed, it's 135 feet on one side and 145 on another. I don't know whether 15 additional feet is going to make much difference.
I'll change that to 125, if that's okay with you.
No, I would say perhaps as written, as submitted.
Okay. Setbacks
As submitted.
as submitted, that's perfect.
And one of the reasons I suggest that is not a significant change is that there's also, in addition to the 135, there's on both of those borders is a 100-foot transmission easement, as well as a 60-foot roadway easement. So it seems like they're already 250 feet, if not a little further.
That's great. I think that's perfect. And then that, because I understand too, you want to have enough room for the fire trucks and stuff to get in there. So I'm happy with that amendment.
So point of clarification for as submitted per their plans. Will that suffice, Susan, in there? Will that, I feel it will accomplish the commissioner's intent. Will it suffice for you? It sounded like it would suffice the applicants.
Yeah, we can either add that as an additional item to the resolution or just add it to the motion.
Beautiful. We'll carry it with the motion. The first and second both agree. Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Possible action, discussion and possible approval of a change of meeting time to 6 p.m. beginning with 2020 meetings. Was there anything in there, or do we find out for discussion?
We would like your, from the 5 of you present, your opinion on whether or not you would be willing or able to meet at 6 p.m. for future meetings. I know 2 of our members really, it won't affect you.
And I wish it would have been at 6 p.m.
Well, right. and Susan, with that real quick, have you addressed this with the 2 that have been appointed there, and did they say yay or nay?
Tammy
I think that's only fair.
Yeah, Tammy has spoken to both of them and said both of them are okay, and one actually prefers the 6 p.m. time.
Beautiful. Then we know where their votes would lie, and I'll commit to that. So,
Simple question, is this prompted by the community saying it would be better for an earlier time, or what?
I think it was addressed at the city council meeting, and from the public.
Came out there? I was just curious if we know. Okay.
Ernie, I would have just liked to have come in earlier, then I could go home earlier.
Frankly, I have no issue. I think coming in earlier is great.
Yeah,
I was just interested as to.
I think it would be a welcome.
Just to make sure I'm not going to say no because the community said,
No.
For the record, I'm good with 6.
Good.
I'm good with 6.
Okay.
Want me to make the motion?
Please do.
I'm sorry, so Ernie, did you have an indication? Are you okay with 6? Yeah. Okay, so our 3 remaining members here are all okay with 6. Okay.
Do we need, so it's for possible action, just discussion, but do we make an approval to officially change our meeting time then?
Given that the other two new members indicated no objection, yes, that would be 5 of you.
Administratively, that's what okay, then I'll entertain a
I'll
motion.
make a motion that we
motion?
change the meetings to 6.
I've got a motion and a second to change the meetings to 6 p.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Monthly progress report.
No comment.
And then before our final public comment period, I'd like to take the time to address one of our members up here. And Koki, I know you're going to have a few words to say. But I'd be remiss if we didn't address your service to this community.
Thank you.
On many different fronts, but up here, your expertise is felt every single month, and our community has truly benefited, and we appreciate your service to this community, and you truly have been a force for change, for positive change. So I want to personally thank you, and as a personal friend, thank you for your service to my hometown. So you've got a few words for us.
Well, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody. I feel so blessed. This community has been so good to me, and it's been so much fun giving back to my community as a planning commissioner. And I want to thank Mr. Mays. He's an amazing leader. And Susan, she's dynamite too, keeps us on the right track, even though we don't want to go there sometimes. And Tammy and the city clerk girls, for the new members coming on board, you couldn't ask for a greater team to help guide you, because as you come on board, none of us know about government rules. I think most of us are, well, you did, Paul, you came from the government world, but there's a lot of new things that you have to learn. The city clerk was there to help me. And these amazing team up here, and I'm going to miss all of you guys because we've had some very heated and wonderful debates, and we've all remained friends and all respect each other, and you're all a bunch of great, good guys, and I'm going to miss you all. And thank you to the community for allowing me to do this for as many years as I have. Thank you. Oh, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And then I don't know how I follow that, but I've got a couple of parting words myself. To Michael, Susan, Tammy, and the city staff, a tip of the hat to you. Thank you very much. And coming from my background, I can truly appreciate what it means to work full-time for part-time people that truly probably don't get it most of the time. So I genuinely appreciate your patience, your due diligence, your extra special attention to detail to help guide us through as we make some important decisions. To the fellow commissioners up here, we have had some heated conversations, and it's good. And I fought through the city council for years to adopt people and keep people who actually do have a difference of opinion, because I think it's more important that we all come with different backgrounds rather than being a bunch of yes men. And so at times we may butt heads and vote differently, but I think that's what Boulder City needs, and it's been wonderful. And then lastly, to the folks who have been appointed to fill our seats, we wish you the best of luck, and I challenge you to continue to fight the good fight, but don't get too comfortable in those seats. So at this time, I'll go ahead and open it up to the final public comment. Anyone wishing to be heard? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the final public comment. Meeting adjourned.
We do have a little sweet treat in honor of our 2 departing members up here, so we can get started on that.